My very first cup of coffee that I had was in France when I was probably in grade 10. And like very good cup of coffee, and it was espresso. And I was like, where do I find some more of this? My name is Shelby, and I work for Smell Tiger Coffee Roasters. So I'm the head roaster here. Basically, I get to play with coffee every day. You might think coffee is like it's just something I'm gonna just drink every day, but there is a lot that goes behind the scenes. Well, I actually started as a part-time barista in university. I worked at my first barista job at the Tin Roof in Erin. The owner, she was kind of my inspiration to get into coffee. I saw her just running a successful business, and she was only 25 at the time. So she was kind of my inspiration to try and like grow that side of me in coffee as well. I was like, I want to be that. I want to do that. When I'm roasting, I'm trying to look for those interesting, unique flavors that come through and try to optimize the flavor of that coffee while also keeping our customers happy and making sure that they like the coffee as well. Right now, we're about a minute and a half into the roast. So this is about turning point when the bean temperature probe is actually finally reading the temperature of the beans. Yeah, it's still green. Haven't seen much change yet, but in about 2 minutes, we'll see a change in the color and a change in the smell. I'm also smelling it pretty often throughout the roast to make sure I find those berry notes or those floral notes coming through. Yeah. Sometimes something else will pop out of the coffee and I'll stop it there. Maybe I'll be really surprised and be like, oh, that's unique, let's try it. So now they're very yellow and I'm already seeing some steam coming from it. So now we're getting close to a cinnamon color. So we're at 6 minutes, so this is about halfway through the roast. This is definitely a cinnamon color. It's starting to smell toasty. The coffee actually loses density, so it becomes very light, and then it also becomes larger. So during this process called first crack, there's a lot of carbon dioxide and gases built up and water vapor inside the bean. And so at first crack, this is when it starts to pop because it's had so much pressure. So you actually see a physical crack that happens in the bean as well as you hear it. So when first crack happens, you'll see roasters listening in on their roaster, paying attention to see if they hear that first crack. There it is. Because that's the first sign of this development process. You have maybe about a window of 1 minute to 2 minutes before from first crack to the end to see how that coffee is developing. So it's a very short period of time and it's very important. So you have to really hone in on your senses, smell the coffee, look at it, see the temperature changes, and figure out when's the best time to drop it. And 3, 2, 1. Oh yeah, that's good. So we're just evenly cooling it down right now. A lot of people mistaken this as the roasting when they first see it. They're like, is this the roasting? No, it's actually done. We're just cooling it down. But it is part of it. I got my hands on a little popcorn popper that my mom had, and I learned that you can actually roast on a popcorn popper. So I tried roasting on that, and I definitely burnt a lot of coffee doing that. I realized that it wasn't working for me, but I was like, okay, how do I do better? I want to try and make something really, really good. I talked to our roaster at the cafe I worked at. He gave me his little countertop roaster that is just an air roaster, just shoots hot air. And it only roasts maybe like 100 grams of coffee, not even. I started practicing at home with that. I actually made some pretty good coffee from there. It's a pretty cool thing. The first time that I actually created a profile, it was cool to say like, oh, I made that. It's something I created and it's out on the shelf. The public is seeing it, they get to taste it. I'm actually really excited to see somebody else try it and see their face light up and like, oh, that's a really good cup of coffee. There's so much to learn, and you kind of find yourself in a wormhole when it comes to coffee. It's kind of intimidating sometimes. I had tried hosting a roasters forum for Kitchener-Waterloo a couple months back, and everyone that showed up was men, and they're all older than me, so it was a little bit intimidating at first. I did meet a few female roasters. My one friend from Indie Coffee, which is actually in Newmarket, we're actually trying to come up with maybe a blend that we could do together that maybe just focuses on like females in coffee. So we might find a coffee to source that's produced by women to try and really like help people be aware that there are a lot of women in the producing and roasting side of coffee, and empower other women, maybe be a representative for women in coffee as well. It's essentially a very standardized way of tasting your coffee. So you're trying to make all the variables equal. So for example, your brew ratio, so how much coffee to water, the temperature of the water, the time of the brew, the water that you're using, the grind size, everything is consistent between each coffee, so that the only differences you're tasting are the coffees itself. Usually in a cupping session, you have to have everything quiet. You can't have a lot of distractions. Nobody can have any BO or perfume on. You have to brush your teeth like 2 hours before you try the coffee, or you have to be awake for at least an hour before you taste the coffee and stuff. So you have to be very controlled before you can taste it, so you're not getting distracted, because it's very easy to give into biases. So in this cupping session, I'm making sure that all the coffees are weighed out the exact same. So now I'm going to smell the dry fragrance and try to see what aromas I get from just the dry grounds. Oh, it's so fruity. It's very raspberry, a lot of raspberry. So I have my timer set for 4 minutes, and as soon as I start pouring, I'm gonna press start, and start. So I wanna make sure all the grinds get wet, get coated in water, just to make sure that it's all even extraction. I'm also gonna pour right to the rim, just to make sure that all the cups have the same amount of water in them, because we want the ratio of coffee to water to be equal. So the coffee has a crust that's built up over top. So what that's doing is it's trapping all the gases underneath, and once you break that crust, it's just going to release that intense amount of aromas. So you want to get your spoons right to the edge, and you're going to scoop it onto the one spoon, just making sure you get all those bubbles taken away. So when you're tasting coffee, you're going to take a good scoop with your spoon. You want a spoon that's bowl-like, so it really gets a good scoop of coffee. It also just helps to aerate it, helps to cool it down. Now, when you're slurping the coffee, you really want to slurp it. So you want to make a really loud sound, like as if you're slurping your soup when it's really, really hot. The body is tea-like, so just like that jasmine tea. Performs really, really well. I think this would do really well over a pour-over and just getting those clean complexities. Being in coffee, you're not meant to be a millionaire. It's just the way it is, right? So, but I feel like this industry deserves more credibility and maybe deserves higher wages because there is a lot of work and a lot of experience that's required to do really well. It's like, oh, I'm not really making much, but it's also my passion as well, right? It's like, it's one of those things, oh, you'll never work a day in your life if you're working with your passion, right?